Hello, everybody. It's Julia, Hummingbird Jewel, and this is show 24, SOUL-utions, a book review show for mind readers. And today I have my author, Brian Scott, in his book, The Reality Revolution. But before we get started, every show I always ask the author to choose a charitable cause. And that's because my mission statement for my life and for my business is to teach love by being an example of love. And what better way than to showcase authors that bring us spiritual messages and to find out what's behind the cover and to emphasize the spiritual principle of service, of giving back to others. So I asked Brian what his cause was, and it is No Kid Hungry. Now, their mission statement is that no child should grow up hungry in America, yet 1 in 7 struggles with hunger. So No Kid Hungry is ending child hunger in America by ensuring that all children get healthy foods that they need every day. Now, they work to end child hunger in America by connecting children with effective food nutritional programs like school breakfast and summer meals. Now, the work is accomplished through the No Kid Hungry Network, which is composed of private citizens, government officials, business leaders, and others, providing innovative hunger solutions to their communities. It's a great cause. Now, this show is a Facebook Live. I always convert it to YouTube. My channel is Hummingbird Jewel. Please subscribe. And in the notes, you will find the link to the charitable cause and their Facebook page. And that way you can help them out by donating or giving your time or helping them with social media. Okay, let's meet my author. So Brian Scott had a profound spiritual awakening that catapulted him into a quest to understand a near-death experience where he had the distinct impression of shifting into a parallel reality. I'll let him speak to that more. Now, he's the founder of the Advanced Success Institute and Reality Revolution, which has hundreds of podcasts on a plethora of spiritual topics where he does his deep dives into meditation, quantum physics, manifestation, and other mind-expanding topics. He's a coach, teacher, NLP practitioner, and also does hypnosis. I believe he's a hypnosis practitioner. So Brian's YouTube channel, I found him on YouTube last year, the Reality Revolution has exploded. And I don't know why, but I distinctly remember he only had I swear to God, I remember this number, 232 people. And I was like, what? Because I was brand new on YouTube. Oh, now he's almost 40,000 people. I mean, that's an incredible amount of growth. It's just beautiful. Now, Brian holds 2 BA degrees from Washburn University. I believe that's in Wyoming. And one is in speech communications and pre-law. Now, during this time, he became a regional debate champion. He then went on and received his MA from the University of Wyoming in speech communication. So Brian's also a bookstore owner of Awesome Sauce Books, and he currently, I think I've said this before, but he does coaching and instruction with individuals on a variety of subjects. He's a loving father who currently resides in California, and he's super excited with the launch of his book, Reality Revolution. Brian, thank you for coming on to the show. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia.
What's it like being on the other side of the interviewing?
Oh, I love it. Talking about my book, talk about me. Hey, I can talk about myself all day long.
So normally, it was talking to you before the show. I can find stuff about people's childhoods, like how they grew up, where they grew up. Can you talk a little bit about your childhood, or maybe did you have brothers and sisters, or a little bit about that?
Yeah, I grew up in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Okay.
And my mom was a teacher. My dad was a veterinarian. And my sister, who's also a successful writer, Wendy Benning Swanson, she's got a magnificent book. And it was a small town in Wyoming. So a unique experience. You probably know, living in Oklahoma, it's a kind of a similar type of environment, and I learned a lot, and it's a unique place to come from. And I think when I was my freshman year, I moved to Kansas, Washburn's in Kansas, and then moved to Arizona.
Kansas. Okay.
Yeah. But went to school in Arizona, in Kansas, and Wyoming. Went to college quite a bit. So nothing extremely exciting. I'm just like everybody else. Yeah.
Okay,
So
pretty normal. Was it a
normal? Yeah.
I upbringing, religion or no religion, or
my parents were Methodists, but not devout. We would go to church a couple times a month, and I was raised pretty much like everybody else in a normal Christian family. I was very fortunate. I'm very grateful because I had wonderful, loving parents. That's
great,
and that's the reason I am who I am. So yeah,
right. And I always it doesn't matter where we come from. Some of us come from other side of the track. Some of us have affluence. Now, did you ever have any spiritual experiences as a child? Like, were you psychic as a child, or were you just kind of regular?
I had little bits and pieces of some experiences. Waking up, sensing entities in my room, asking my parents what's going on. I swear there's something in here, and I've had a few things like that,
right?
And so there was certainly a part of me that was aware there was something bigger going on. My family, on my mom's side, going back to my great grandmother, incredibly spiritual. My grandfather regularly spoke to entities and spirits all the time. And there's a portion of our family that would get together, usually at funerals and marriages. They would communicate with all of our past ancestors. And so I remember that it was kind of a secret. They kept it from my dad, who didn't really believe in that stuff. But so there was definitely that portion of a belief that something more was going on, but it wasn't talked about out in the open, kind of, if that makes sense.
It never was with me. But I always seems to skip a generation. Like it was for me, it was my grandmother she was psychic, and I was like, why did you tell me, Grandma? And she goes, well, back then that was really kind of a bad thing, and so I just kept it secret.
One of the most unusual stories. I recently got, my father passed away. I was at his funeral, and somebody from my mom's side was at the funeral and brought me aside. And, Brian, I got to tell you the story about your grandfather in Nebraska. There was all these people in the family that said that he would play in the backyard. He would go into this place and he was playing with elves that looked like elves, and nobody understood. And I carried that forever, that he regularly played with these elf-like creatures. And so I don't know if it's true, but the person that told me, I completely I believe. So I think we all have unusual spiritual experiences from our families in the past, but
that's pretty cool. Thank you for that, because I really couldn't find anything about it. So I said, well, I'll come up with something new than typical questions. But okay, let's talk about the spiritual awakening. I didn't really tell people, and I know it's in your book, and I also listened to your very first podcast. But tell us a little bit about what happened in Colorado.
Well, that happened in California. The awakening. It
was California.
Right. The awakening happened before this experience. I had my awakening before I had this experience. So what happened for me was my awakening, as with many other people's, was evoked and inspired by some bad things that had happened in my life. I was, I had 2 kids, and we were living in Colorado, and the mother of my kids fell in love with her first love. It happens. And I was devastated, and she was going to move to Oregon. So I was going to lose my kids unless I had a nasty legal fight. I could bring the money and fight, and it could be this ongoing, never-ending feud between us, or I could let her move to Oregon, and I would essentially be alone, but I would see my kids on the holidays. And I started drinking, and I just went to the worst place. My debts were up. My business was failing. I had a friend that offered to let me live in a place in California, and so I reached some really low points where I said, there's a pool in the backyard, and maybe I should just weigh my ankles down and jump in and not come up, or thinking regularly, how can I end it?
Yeah.
How can I end it? I gave up. I was hopeless. And I had this hopeless feeling that the debt was over. There was no way I could solve so many problems that I had in my life. And so there was nothing that I could do. I felt like there was no, so I had to go within. The only resource I knew, because intellectually I had read a lot of great spiritual works, the only resource I knew that if maybe I can deal with this by going within, because I can't kill myself. I have kids, and I would break them. So I started to practice meditation. Very difficult for me, because I seemingly had like an attention deficit disorder. I had been studying this stuff for a long time. I was a master practitioner in neurolinguistic programming, but it was more about the language side and the hypnosis, but I hadn't really reached the spiritual side. And then I got better and better at it. I started working on my meditations. I really had a lot of time to myself to really dedicate to meditation. And then I was able to spend more and more time in it. And I had this event where I think I had been meditating for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I had absolutely an awakening. I knew my energy had changed. My chakras had awakened, and I had shrunk down. It felt like I had gone into my pineal gland, like into it. Like I wasn't opening it. I had actually gone into this room, and I had met my higher self. And it was more than a dream. It could have been a dream, but for me, it was vivid. And it was like I was having a conversation with my higher self. And my higher self was saying, you're going to have some crazy stuff happen in the future, but I'm here and everything's going to be okay. And almost coming to me saying, just keep doing what you're doing. Center yourself, stay positive, and gave me some, so things start getting better for me at that point. I start really working on my everyday thoughts and what I'm doing, and really analyzing, breaking down why I had created the reality that I had been in. And I started to really start to see some effects, and my business turned around. I fell in love again. I quit drinking. I started and quit my addictions, and things got better and better. And then I'm watching the Super Bowl. I'm a big Broncos fan. Right. And at this point, I'm feeling excited because I've transformed my life, and done things that seemingly were impossible to me. And when your team wins the Super Bowl, you watch every single, watch ESPN. You're going to watch. I'll literally watch for hours, for days, and everything they say about it. So I'm just laying there on the couch at 3 a.m, and I had an old porch door, a sliding porch door that kind of I hadn't fixed it. I was, and so it would kind of drug to open. And I heard that noise, and I was just in that loopy feeling. I looked up, and the door was open, and oh no, my cats have got out. And I'm not thinking about anything. I thought I had been so distracted by the Super Bowl that my cats had, run out. So I get up and I walk to the back porch door, and there is this kid standing there with a gun pointed right at me. And, in that moment, I just could hear, first of all, when I awoke and went to the door, I felt like there was a presence, something was going on, and I was like being guided. And then I just, shut the door, and time slowed down for me. It was definitely something was going on. I shut the door, I turned to run, and I could see in front of me all these different variable possible realities happening in front of me. I could see myself laying out and dying over here, and getting shot over here. And then I could hear the glass, and he shoots the gun at me, and I could hear that it was 2 panes of glass, and I knew how slow this was because I could hear the first pane as the bullet broke through the first pane. Then seems like hours, I could hear the second pane of glass. And so I'm just starting to run, and I can feel a thump on my back. And something had hit me, and I'm like, oh, I don't have time. So I run to the other room. It backed up against a large area, so that I had 2 open porch doors, and people had jumped over this park and started robbing my house. I think they thought I wasn't there. They looked in the back my bedroom and nobody was sleeping there because I was laying there watching the Super Bowl.
Right.
There's somebody else in my bedroom, and he starts shooting at me, and I see the bullet going by me, like right in front of my eyes, hitting the wall. It's so surreal to me. It didn't feel real, but everything's happening slowly, and I never once was afraid. I was never scared. Everything felt like I was going to be okay, and I knew that I was dreaming. So I went to my garage. Fortunately, I had my phone. Called the police, and they eventually found these kids. They're just some kids. There's some kids that were on drugs and had going around to different houses, and I went back in. They looked at my back and they said, something happened to you. You need to go to the hospital. And I'm like,
So you were shot.
I was shot. The bullet bounced off my back. So he shot me with the 22. So it wasn't like in the movies. It wasn't a boom, right? It was a pop.
Pop, yeah.
And it slowed down from the glass in the porch door, which I shut. And so by the time it gets to my back, and maybe the angle I'm at as I'm moving, it bounces. I have a single mark on my back. They take me to the hospital, and it didn't enter. 22, if it goes in your body, is going to just be worse than a heavier caliber because it's going to bounce around, and it's even more destructive if it had gone into my body, right? So they take me back. I don't have anything but my phone and the gown that they have at the hospital. They have those slippers.
Yeah.
And they have this gown. They've torn everything. And I have to Uber, so I'm Ubered in this gown with my phone, and that's all I got. They pull up to my house, and it's all police taped off, and there's helicopters, and they're surrounding the house, and the house in front of me was the kids. I guess where the kids had done it, the house in front of me. So I had to stand, not knowing about my cats, watching all this happen, and for hours that day without it, they had taken my wallet. And so I finally get back inside, and I can't stop thinking that I did not deserve this second chance. Something miraculous had happened, something unusual, maybe not. But all I know is if I had died at that point, I would, what had I left behind for my kids? What had I done? And so I knew in that moment, no matter what happened, if I die tomorrow or the next day, I needed to deserve my second chance. So really, this book that I wrote and everything that I've done with my channel has not been anything more than me trying to justify this incredible second chance that I had been given. And ultimately, when I went back in my house, everything was a little bit different over time, over several days, as I explained in the book. There were different objects in my house. People were calling me that I had never talked to, acting like I had talked to them multiple times. And something was different. The air was different. The colors were different. I seemingly felt like maybe I had jumped into some other reality.
Right.
Even the environment around me, the other houses, buildings were different. I saw too many differences, almost like I had been thrown into this other reality, and perhaps the version of me that got shot did die.
Right. There's one that died and one that didn't.
And so I'm in this reality now, and and I'm keep on going. Maybe that's how it works. So I was definitely concerned that I was going insane. I'm my dad's a veterinarian. I grew up as science is the most important thing, and not to believe in anything crazy. So I needed to find a reason. How did this happen? So I went on this quest to understand, is there parallel realities? Did I enter a parallel reality? Am I insane? Was it post-traumatic stress disorder? And is it hallucinations? And I'm always going to resolve to the most obvious scientific explanation to try to, and so if the book is really explaining me trying to come to grips with this bizarre event that had happened and the changes that had occurred. So
I have always been fascinated with time travel, and but as spiritual things would happen to me, I always call myself the skeptical psychic because I always wanted the proof of it. And I'm kind of like that too. I want to know the science side of things. It kind of gives me a little bit of comfort in understanding both sides of it too. So, I mean, it just it just makes sense. And mine was when my dad died. He just had a normal death. I don't know if there's a normal death. There wasn't anything. He had been sick for a while, but it made me think, like, what's going on? What happens when we die? And I mean, I started like really digging into it, and I was like, prove it. You need to prove it. Asking, and they always prove it.
Yeah.
I get the proof.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. It's just so incredible. So let's talk a little bit about, I got some questions. I read your book. It's 400 pages, y'all, but it's a pretty good quick read. I mean, you can either slow it down or you can go through it. I'm a speed reader, luckily, because I only started reading it last week.
You don't have to read it from page to page. You can go chapter by chapter.
Yeah. You talk about
pick it up and read it in any section. So
yeah, you talk about the inner brain. Can you talk a little bit about that for the audience, about our inner brain?
Well, there,
like how fear interacts with the inner brain. I think that's what it was.
Well, part of our genetic makeup is designed around survival. So we have programs built into us that are designed for survival. We are an incredible system that's been built together to survive incredible things. We're in a modern technological society, but living in an older, and so there's an inner brain in us that has automatic responses to protect us from dying. As I had in my experience, there's things that are going on. So what happens is fear is a signal that we have that helps us to survive events. That fear signal that we have is part of our intuitive response. And so understanding that sometimes this fear signal can be evoked for no reason or can be linked and anchored to things that are not justified of fear, but we can create a bodily response and ultimately more than that around the fear. We're experiencing that now a lot. I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing fear. And so, yes, absolutely understanding the way that fear interacts with your thought process helps me to understand how to create my reality and change my reality. And understanding fear is a big part of it.
Yeah, and it's important right now too. Like I keep just like coming back to the center, and because I'll get out there too a little bit, or get triggered by something.
Who doesn't? Nobody's perfect, right?
Yeah, and especially like grief will do that too. I remember after my dad died, it's been almost a year, and I picked up I was in the grocery store and I saw a can of mandarin oranges. I was perfectly happy and fine, and all of a sudden I burst out into tears because he eat mandarin oranges, and I was like, wow, what just happened to me? Yeah, because we have those automatic responses that come in.
I think we're a greater being stuck in a vehicle that has these automatic responses, and while we're here in this existence, we just have to learn how to deal with them. So
what is viewpointing? I thought that was interesting. I had never heard of it.
Well, when we start to explore the idea of moving into a parallel reality, if you want to enter into a reality where you own a helicopter, for instance, you have to take the viewpoint of owning the helicopter. It's hard for people to take viewpoints. So I have an exercise that I first learned from Frederick Dotson that I also describe in this book. And that is, I think I just unplugged my microphone.
I can hear you, but that's okay.
Okay, there we go. So, so if you need to be able to take the viewpoint of anything. So this mouse has a viewpoint. Imagine that everything has a viewpoint. And so when you go through the office that you're in, the picture behind you, and imagine that it's a conscious living thing, and what is its viewpoint? And as you go around through different objects, then you can go larger. What's the viewpoint of my house? What's the viewpoint of my cat? When you do this, it helps you, first of all, to gain control of all of the items in your environment. You slowly become more and more aware of every tiny little thing. And then when you create viewpoints for realities, you're much, much better at it than just some singular little thing. As if you're looking out of a cave, you're able to get a more expansive view, and you get in touch with the material around you. And so it's a good first step to learn how to explore different realities is understanding viewpoints.
Got it. I understand that. It's kind of like open focus meditation where Dr. Joe's having us, focus on space. And I was like, what are they talking about? And when
Yeah.
they said, look at the sentence, see the brown fox run, and only look at the space between the words. And that helped me understand
Yes.
it. Like you're looking at the space, not the words, the space in between each word. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like viewpoint, but in a different perspective.
Well,
When you said that, all of a sudden I went into that picture and looked
right.
out. It was like, whoa.
Well, and that adds another layer to it. Once you start viewpointing these different objects, you become aware that there's a space that would not exist without the opposite of the non-space of the object. There is something powerful with nothingness, with the void that Dr. Joe talks about.
Yeah.
And so the viewpointing lets you become aware of the space of everything. And that's where that picture behind you came from the nothingness. And so it is a part of the process. Absolutely.
Let's talk about the two forms of energy in our body.
Well, I think that there may be more than two forms. We have physical energy that wakes us up or goes to sleep. We have sexual energies, which are profoundly different. I think that there's energies connected to each of the chakras, and even outside of that, there's layers of different energy. There's an energy of will that we have from our solar plexus. There's an energy of love that we can get. There's an energy of confidence. There's an energy there's a spiritual energy. There's an energy of openness. And the more and more I explore energies, which I think I make the argument in the book, hopefully I made it, that a lot of people are meditating and they're not talking about energy. And so become aware of the energies in your life, the way that you connect with others and how your energy dynamically connects to objects, to things, to situations. And the more we become aware of these energies, the more we can tune in to the environment or reality that we want. So two in particular, I don't think there's two anymore, but I do believe that that there's particularly sexual energies and loving energies, ego energies. There's so many different energies, and I could talk about it forever.
Yeah, and then there's the meridians.
Absolutely.
That word came to me years ago. Like I'll get incoming messages. I don't know. I'm sure we all do, but I don't know what they mean.
Right,
like,
right.
I'll put a word in, and I won't even know what it means. And then like, what's a meridian? So then I go to my phone or I go look it up. And when I was a kid, I automatic wrote Dharma, and I spelled it right and everything, but I didn't know what Dharma was.
Wow.
I didn't even know anything about Eastern religion at all, so I had to look it up. It's like,
wow.
I know.
That's
so
amazing.
I remember the meridians. I go, what's a meridian? And now Vadim talks about the energy fountains and widening our meridians, tension.
It's interesting because all of the different spiritual disciplines, people are using different words for energy, and there may be differences. We have meridians, which are talked about in transurfing, which is really the idea that these meridians need to expand so more energy goes through. Then we talk about chakras, and you have the idea that these chakras are like wheels that move and spiral. There may be a meridian and a chakra. And then,
I think there are. I think the meridians to me look like they go out and down, and the chakras are up and down, but I don't know.
a hose that is blocking or freeing up the energy, and then the chakras is the way that the energy moves. Then Dr. Joe is just saying energy centers, which is probably a way of taking both and putting them together. Clearly, there is places of energy. Neville Goddard talks about energy vortices on your hands, on the right side of your body, and your head.
Yeah.
The more you read about it, and also the 5 Tibetans, there are psychic centers, which are similar to the chakras. It's probably way even more than we can imagine. But the more I research it, the more I find totally fascinating. And I do believe that these energy centers have helped me to maneuver through my realities, and they're important to understand.
I actually have always, I self-taught myself how to do readings and tarot. Nobody taught me, but I use my hand. Like I'll put my hand on a card or my hand on the person's name, and I don't know why. And then somebody said, "Oh, the Egyptians used their hands
Yeah.
to breathe," and I didn't know that. You know, it's
There's
like,
an energy center in her hand that senses more than just feel, that actually senses energy, and
uh,
like an eye almost. We these things we don't know about. We are, raised to not think that their hands have these, and so there's a belief system deep within us that we're just physical bodies that don't have these additional abilities and energies around us. So
what I really like about you, which I try to do also, is you're like a spirit. I call it a spiritual broker. Like, you're not afraid to go, "I didn't make this up. This is from this author," or "I read this book,"
mhm.
or "Go to
Yes.
this teacher," or "Try this technique," because I always call us, we're all snowflakes. We're all individuals. We're intricate,
Yeah.
and we respond and we relate to things differently. And one teaching would be like, "Wow, that, I get it," and to
Mhm.
somebody else, wouldn't even. So I really love the way your
Exactly.
book is full of all different aspects, and your podcasts
Well,
too,
thank
you know. And I also love the way your podcast is set up. Your playlists are very organized, and that's so important to me because sometimes I just want to get to one of your meditations. Other times I want to
you.
interview, or I want a particular topic that I'm
Mhm.
trying to listen to. So I really appreciate your organizational skills on that. So
Well, yeah, I believe in this thing. I'm researching it. I may put it in my next book called Open Source Spirituality, and that is the idea. Like in computers, open source. I want to get as many different sources. So if I listen to Abraham, if I listen to Bashar, I listen to Vadim Zeland, I'm going to bring them all together. And what works for me personally, I will bring together and add it. What doesn't, then I'll lay it aside. And I'm constantly trying to do that. I think we all are. I don't want to believe in one ism, one thing, because that limits me. I want to have all of it, and I want to get more information. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm trying to do.
yeah. Let's talk about breath. How
Yes.
do you, it's so important, especially right now. I
Yeah.
mean, and who was it? I mean, just bringing yourself to center with the breath. Um,
Absolutely.
what do you feel
I
about
just put
breathing?
out a breathing meditation.
You
And
did.
yeah, that like a couple episodes ago, and I have an episode on breathing, and I do think I talk about it in the book. There's a number of uh, the thing about the breath that's so unique is it's part of our subconscious and our conscious. So when I am not thinking about it, I'm just breathing, and my subconscious takes care of it, and I can breathe in, and then I can consciously breathe in. So there's that little connection. That's the place where the powerful deep part of our subconscious is, and also our conscious. So when we explore the breath, we're moving to that beautiful spot between our conscious and conscious mind. The energy, when we breathe in, we're also accessing energy. It also guides our energy centers. And so when you study pranayama and yoga, it is so fascinating. And the more I expand my knowledge of breathing, it is an absolutely best way to raise your consciousness. And to align your heart and mind. People that are having health problems, especially with the coronavirus, which is a breathing related disease, a lot of times I think that if you haven't consciously tried to work on your breathing, maybe some people are struggling when they start to struggle with their breathing. By working on that stuff, you have greater control and willpower. I think it helps. It's important. Yeah.
Breath is awe. So what's your next newest? You're going to write another book, or what's going to be next in your?
I got two projects I'm working on. Like I said, I want to write a book about open source spirituality that could bring some of this stuff together, similar to what I have. And then I'm also working on a book about Neville Goddard. I want to work about his personal stories because it's very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And there's something unique about Neville Goddard's expression of awakening, but also his personal story of awakening is really interesting. So and we'll see how it goes. Writing a book this book I finished a year ago, so it's a lot harder than I thought. It takes a lot more to
That's a
do.
lot
So
to it. Yeah, I noticed a big difference. Like, I was like, wonder when he finished that book, because it seemed like you went from not using the word God to now it's like no fear using that word. And
there's
I've
no doubt.
always had a little bit of problem with it because I don't want people to
Yeah.
get triggered, or to, because some people are like, oh, religion,
Right.
but God to me is light and
Yes.
love, and it's not a person. It's I am part of it. I'm a spark of God. You're a part of it. I'm a part of it. That's my impression, but other people, they get triggered. But it's great that we're not afraid to say God anymore. I appreciate that.
I admit, if you read listen to my first podcast, maybe the first 100, maybe the 50, I was concerned about using the word God because I knew that I would push a certain group of people away.
Right.
And those were my friends. I have friends that
I know.
I have close friends that were like, "What are you doing?" When I was talking about this stuff. So there's a part of me, the little voice saying, "I don't want my friends are going to think maybe I'll just the universe."
Right.
And eventually, I reached a point where I had talked about this stuff so much that I need to be honest with myself. We need to talk about God. I do explore God, I think, pretty extensively in many different levels if you follow the podcast. And I do talk about that fear. It's interesting because everybody has a different understanding of God. And I've made the mistake when somebody starts talking about God, turning it off, going to the next video. I don't want to hear somebody tell me about God. I was that person. I've been in that state. So I understand it. And eventually, for me to keep on going through the spiritual journey and to teach, I couldn't just ignore it anymore. And for many episodes, I'd explain, hey, there's more to it. Don't worry about the word God, but it is. Some
Good
people
for you. I'm glad. I was raised by atheists, and they had a little bit of church, and then Mom yanked me out of church and said God is a lie. He couldn't have made the earth in 7 days. Christians are evil, not just bad, evil. They just want your money. So I believed my mom, but I was, really sad because it's like finding out Santa Claus isn't real. And but I kind of am grateful to that because I found my own way.
Right.
I found my own path and my own way to understanding what God is.
Organized religion has pushed many of us away from God. We've seen the dark side where people are they're using it as a way of a means of making money and manipulating people. Right. And so when I see that, why would I be interested in this? And that's what's interesting in my explanation. I've explored that stuff, the stuff that you're talking about, and it is fascinating to me with the way that Vadim Zeland talks about God as compared to Neville Goddard or even Dolores Cannon. They all have a different explanation of it, and I think we all come to our own individual understanding of it, if we believe it or not. My journey has helped me, and so
well, just between you and me and everybody that's going to watch this, I believe in multiple parallel realities. I feel like I've shifted, and sometimes it's just waking up. I just wake up and things are different. And I do believe we can shift into a reality that is better suited for us too.
Yes.
So like I said, I've always been fascinating with time travel, and it doesn't mean getting into some machine. It's all here, And hypnosis really was interesting too. That can open oh my gosh, different realms. Talk about elves, fairies, different realms where things exist. It's all pretty wonderful. Well, we gotta end. I don't want to. I was just telling Brian, y'all, that I had never talked to him, but I felt like I knew him because he's so open and warm, and like a lot of people don't answer you if you messenger them, and you've always been such a great friend and support to me, and I just really appreciate you, and it's so wonderful to meet you, and I hope we can do this again.
Yeah, it's only 40 minutes. I can keep going if you need to. So.
If you want to, we don't have to end it. It's my show. I mean,
yeah, why not?
We'll bring up a topic. What's on your mind?
Well, something that you mentioned that I'm still kind of exploring in the book, and the more I'm seeing more and more. When I had that event happen, it was a radical event. When I got shot, this radical event had happened. So I felt like my higher self had thrown me into this parallel reality. A lot of us have this ability to go to parallel realities, but we have this higher aspect of ourselves that is protecting us. because it doesn't want us to go insane. If I wake up and there's no McDonald's in the world, or like that movie, the Beatles don't exist, it would be too much for us to handle, and we would go insane. So what I learned from this event, the best thing I can carry to you, as you have seen, is when you start really attempting to explore these parallel by quantum jumping and moving into parallel realities, you're going to have events that are going to have reality shifts. Don't make a big deal about it. Find a way to reduce the importance of it, or don't think that you're insane, and then you'll start to see more of it. When you start to see the realities loosen up a little bit, if your higher self thinks, okay, she can handle it, then that is what I'm talking about. I think I went through this change where I saved because I had no other choice. My higher self said, well, he might go insane, but we're just going to throw him over into this reality where he's still alive. And so I do think that there's this aspect of ourselves that is keeping us in our reality on purpose. So if we open ourselves to the craziness of the universe and don't respond to these unusual events, then you'll start to see more of it. That is the really interesting thing. And the more I've done it, I can only say is I've had several times where I've had crazy things happen recently. And I've just said, okay, I'm not going to mention it. I'm not going to talk about it on my podcast or mention it. And it's allowed me to maneuver into some crazy, unusual events that have happened. When I was trying to manifest them, I was going, there's no way that could happen. It would be impossible for that to happen. But now I've entered into this reality where it happened.
Yeah.
But I know a part of me says, as soon as I start to talk about it with you, it'll stop.
It could. Yeah, when I first started discovering the Mandela effect, I mean, if somebody put a name to it, and for those that don't know that, it's when things are spelled differently, or movies have different characters than you remember, and there's all sorts of things. At first, I was kind of annoyed by it, and I'm like, oh, I know how Ecuador was spelled. I did a paper on it when I was a kid. I was a really good speller. Right. And then I realized, who cares? You know? Really, who cares how Ecuador is spelled? So now I just look the words up and just go, oh, whatever.
Right.
So it's kind of what you're saying, you know, it's like, because I'm happy where I'm at. So if I'm happy where I'm at, and if I shifted to where Ecuador is spelled differently, that's not a big deal in the large scheme of things. And then I'm also careful about not wanting to jump every time I feel like a little something's wrong, right? Like, just like, see things through, you know, you don't have to just, you know, because you're angry at one thing, or maybe there's a lesson to be learned in this unfortunate experience that you might be encountering, because I've grown so much from the so-called traumas in my life and stuff like that. But lately, you know, I'm getting ready to move, and I have no care about my memories. Like, I don't really care about them anymore. Like, most people are like, oh, save your pictures. They're so important. I'm like, I don't really care about my memories anymore. I'm like, okay, who is this? Is this like a new person?
Well, there's something Carlos Castaneda, Vadim Zeland was a big follower of Carlos Castaneda and mentions him in his book, that I keep on coming back to. It's similar to revision. It's recapitulation. And we're kind of locked into all these memories that we have. That's our whole, when we die, according to Carlos Castaneda, we go through this process where we go back through our whole life. Right. The life flashes before our eyes. We're stuck in all these memories. And so Carlos Castaneda says that there are entities that are they're ready to feed on on all these memories. So if you go through this process of recapitulating, remembering all of your past and letting it go, there's a free spirit under you that is not controlled by your memories. And so it's hard because we have some great memories. We can use them as tools to manipulate our current feelings. But I have a strong feeling now, after one of the things that happened when I had my near-death experience, in that moment when I'm shot and thinking I'm going to die, I start remembering my whole life. When I had my kids, with my dad, mowing the lawn, even obscure, ridiculous events, all of these things. And I realized there's something to that. So the memories, what you're going through, I think, is an important sign. When we start to, we don't want to like have Alzheimer's, but
Right.
maybe that's what
No.
some with Alzheimer's, maybe that's the advantage for them, is that they're preparing to move to a higher spiritual realm, and they're purposely having some of these memories pulled away from them. My father went through dementia,
That's
and
true.
there's a part of me that said maybe he purposely, the higher self, let go of some of that stuff. I don't
So
know.
we could let go.
Right. So
Wow, I never thought of that.
we define ourselves by our memories.
That's
And so
true.
you might have this amazing reality where you're an incredible singer or writer or whatever, but if you're locked into your memories, your memories are going to define who you think you can be.
Right.
I'm just this kid from Cheyenne, Wyoming. So could I ever write a book or do a YouTube channel? No. So that person I had to let go of and create. And so, like Quasi talks about on his channel, we create an identity. When you create an identity and move to a parallel reality, you almost have to create new memories that were not there before. So what I think you're saying about memory is really interesting and deserves further discussion. Neville Goddard's wonderful technique of revision is also powerful.
I like that.
Do our memories really matter? If you had a terrible fight with your partner, if you go back before you go to sleep and imagine that that it was a wonderful, loving conversation, when you wake up, that memory, that argument that you had, it doesn't exist anymore. And then you respond to your partner a different way. And then you're back into that reality where you didn't have a fight. Even if he remembers the fight, the energies are different. You're moving. So memory is a part of us moving through these realities. We're locked into the reality that we're in through our memory. So I think that it's a great sign that you're letting your memories go. I think that
it was interesting. I'm like, I really don't care about it. Like, I care. Like, I was spent a year in Sweden, and it's an album of my year in Sweden, but I was 15 and I love that memory, and I just didn't care about it. Like, it's like,
Right. Well, of course, we have the memories that are the really profound ones that we can't escape from. If we need to revise those. But I do think that you've really touched on something almost worth another book. That the memories are very important. Our memories are important, and it's not all we have is this moment now. And so make this moment as best as we can. And so the memories can pull us away from that. So
now, I'm really big on reverse aging, and I was surprised in your book. You said, I want to live forever. You wrote that down. I was like, oh, Brian's into it.
I need to have you on my show to talk about that. But yes.
So Vadim says it's an induced transition, which I love that, because we're programmed from childhood that you're going to get old at a certain age. And of course you believe it, right? You believe that. But what if you what if you taught your children that you live to 300? Right. And they believe that, would it make a difference? So I've been messing around with that for a while, and I'm 61 now and vibrant, and people go, wow, you must have been so beautiful when you were young. And I'm like, well, not so much, because I was drinking and drugging, and I was not healthy. I wasn't spiritually healthy. I was depressed. I called myself the queen of pain.
Your story is amazing, and it's a real inspiration even for me.
Thank you.
The story. The argument is I believe this strongly, that advances in technology. If you believe that technology is bad, go ahead and live in that induced transition of reality. Technology is constantly improving humanity, and medical advances are coming with CRISPR. We are coming to the point where we are going to be able to solve viruses and cancers and diseases. We're going to be able to transform our bodies. And if we can stay healthy enough long enough, we can enter into this new age where we can live forever. We can get hit by a car, but our bodies are not going to die. And I think that we can do that mentally. If our belief system is pulling us into an aging type of thing, and it's wonderful to see validation of my belief in you that we can reverse our aging. It is about our mind. Everything is about our mind, and you're proof of it, because
every little cell.
So we constantly reiterate that I'm becoming younger.
Yeah.
I look back 10 years, and I looked older. My face it was starting to wrinkle, and I had concerns, and I could see myself. Your youth, and like I say with my girlfriend, we're going to live forever, all the time. Your youth is not a product of how old you are. It's a product of your belief system. Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. That's
Yeah.
so cool. Oh gosh. Okay. So how do people get a hold of you?
They can go to my website at therealityrevolution.com or advancedsuccessinstitute.com. I'm not doing a lot of coaching right now.
I bet. I was wondering when that was going to end, because you just maybe some classes or something where we
might do. I might do some group coaching and things like that. But I just want to help as many people as possible in the best way possible. So I'm still exploring that.
Well, you're doing it with your book, because people buy the book and there's just so much information in there. And I mean, that's one of the best ways you can touch so many people. I'm so proud of your book, and
thank you.
I was so excited for you.
My publisher was mad because I was like, there's a part of me that just wants to give this book away to everybody for free. I'm not concerned about it. I'm not looking at the bestsellers. The book, the intention of this book was to if I held all this information to myself, I would be wrong. I want to share my journey, and I know that maybe even one person out there can take this, who's in the same situation as me, that's thinking about killing themselves and that everything is hopeless. If I can just find one person that reads this book and says, no, that you have the power to change it, that's really what I know. There's someone out there, and that was the feeling I had. The reason I had to get this book done was I had to share this. It would have been selfish of me, once I had overcome this and I had all this knowledge, to not share it. So,
and I wouldn't change one thing in my life, and not one thing. And I've had some pretty so-called trauma things happen because they've made me who I am. And so to me, it's I turn it into wisdom, like Dr. Joe says. And, and then we're here to help others because we can empathize with them, because we've been there. And
the advantage technique in reality transurfing, I always come back to it. It's very powerful. Everything that happens to us is happening for an advantage. Yes. If we constantly are aware of that, then it seems almost as if we're able to use weird events and we react to them better, and they end up being to our advantage. It's true. If we keep that as a mindset, and you're absolutely right. Everything that's happened to me, I'm happy that it did. And
lately I laugh at everything, which can be construed like as rude. So I have to be careful, because somebody will say something, awful, and I'll just like, and they're like, but it's almost like so ludicrous that it's a reaction to be, instead of horrified, the old empathic me that would take in every feeling, and it would crush my heart, and I would feel their pain. Now I'm just like, kind of like, oh my God, yeah, I remember that.
Humor, humor is importance, can really destroy your mindset and can cause imbalances in your life when you make things important or you really overreact to things. And so what you said is true. I'm the same. If I can find humor in it, then it seems like I can reduce the importance of it, and I can respond. It's my reaction. So
yeah, it's a diffuse of the pendulums and stuff. So. All right, sweetie. Well, I have to say goodbye, but let's not let this be the last time we talk.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Thank you again, and bye, everybody.
Thank you, Julia.
Bye.